Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Hearts of Iron 3 with Black Ice 8.6, and of course we are playing in Germany. So let's take this up a bit. Two more. Okay, medium anti-aircraft armament has advanced, and that is all shipping of various types. So we've got that pushed up. Cruiser fire control. Yeah, let's do cruiser fire control. Let's also reduce this down by 1. There we go. Just want to pause it because I don't want to have a negative effect. So I'm starting a second wave of a couple of these light divisions that I hopefully will be useful. And starting some other fighters in production, and a destroyer to help with practicals, and obviously also to build up our armed forces. Okay, medium fuel tank research, that would be under here. Okay, so we're all caught up for 1936 techs, getting ready to jump into that real soon. Not quite yet for those, and I would rather 39. Did I say 36? I forget what I said. Okay, but what I would much rather do is, if we're going to push ahead on things, and we can, well, let's do this, but that improve electro welding. There's force multipliers or things that allow other things to get going better and such, so I'd rather do some of that stuff on infrastructure type, pushing ahead a little bit on technology. Okay, twin engine bomber crew layout. Okay, now we're at a 1940 level there. Basic education. Earlier, of course, we get that upgraded in the new year coming up. Its effects multiply throughout, all research, getting more of that done. We're just getting a upgraded bomber a little sooner. That's nice, but doesn't have nearly the effects now in the game. Of course, it would matter a bit more if we were actively fighting right now. That would be a different change. And am I sure that we're going to have everything up to date when the fighting starts? No. And not that we won't maybe struggle to. No, we don't need repair rate just yet. So that's industrial zone improvements. No, I'm still trying to raise more money. Keep being stuck right around this 3,000 mark. Yes, that would be very helpful, US. Mobile unit training. Yeah, we're going to let that go. I'm going to wait till the end of September to fire that, I believe. I current plan. And let's see if we can find some other countries to want to buy some supplies. Turkey has money, needs some supplies, so let's see if we can sell them some. No, they don't want any. They don't have enough money. The US just bought a bunch. Maybe we can sell them some more. Yeah, let's go for 20. Soviet Union, they got money. Oh yeah, they got money. Actually, selling supplies to the Soviet Union is also very historical. The Germans sold a bunch of well, let's see. They sold them the rolling mills or presses or whatever to do very large elements of steel so that the Soviets could build the T-34. Basically, the Soviets could not have built the T-34 without German assistance. If you remember, the BT series, which the T-34 grows out of, is a angular design with welded bits and pieces on it, much thinner, much smaller pieces. So, or at least in some of the larger stuff that Soviets needed. I don't want to overstate that, but on a few of the major things, and I may have some of the details wrong, but some of the big press machines National Socialist Nazi Germany sold to Communist Russia so that they could build this stuff. Some of the big maybe thought primary uses at the time by Germany would be building capital ships, because these are some of these big steel presses that you make the steel armor when it's hot, that it's glowing. I don't know, you wouldn't necessarily call that molten, but hot that it's glowing so that it's flexible. And some of these large rolling machines, the Soviets did not have the capability to build at the time, or obviously they would have built them, and nobody else was interested in selling them the stuff. I think the Germans probably thought they were going to be building, and they very well may have built some, larger capital ships, the gun turrets and things like that, and they just may have not been concerned about that, but they did put it to use making some other larger armored fighting vehicles with them. The Germans sold the Soviet Union licensing agreements and technical assistance to get it going, and I don't know how much of the machinery, maybe a lot, for the motorcycle and sidecar arrangements that I think we'll have an event and they'll say which exact model, but one of the models that Germany was using was sold to the Soviet Union so that they could make it. The Pak 36 gun was sold to the Soviet Union so they could make it, and they started out in the 36 millimeter or 37 millimeter, I think, but later upped it to basically the same mount, upped it to a 45 millimeter anti-tank gun. So several of the major Soviet designs were set up, the industry was set up with very significant German assistance. Now, for the anti-tank guns, for the motorcycles, that was, other than maybe a few examples, that was all Soviet production, but I do believe there was significant, and I don't know the details, I'm sure there are probably some records somewhere, but whether if they sold them all the machinery, or just sort of, because it was more than just selling the plants. It was, some little bit to, or just help them set up with their machinery, producing some of the German designs. So Germany very much during this time period were selling things to the Soviet Union. And of course Germany was buying raw materials from them, and later as well. Okay, paratrooper activation. That was construction. Paratroopers. Okay, great. Now, which opens up what else? Okay, air landing infantry. Airborne unit training control. So, we just haven't done this yet because it's going to be a while before we do that. Not that it wouldn't help, but it's not helpful. Not helpful a lot at this point. Airborne unit, good. So we can start doing some more of that. We already have pack and amphibious artillery, but we don't yet have airborne mixed support. Okay. Rocket artillery, we'll see about doing that fairly soon. HQs. HQs. Okay, let's go for this. That would be cool. So 38 tech. Okay, ammunition capacity advance. That would be for the fighters, I believe, here. Okay. And here we're starting to look at 39. There. Yeah. So like I was saying earlier, things like supply productions and such are already helpful. So yeah, let's start with the road network. If we're selling a lot of supplies, that means we're in essence using the supplies to fund our resources. Money, no. Okay. Still just the Munich thing, which we will do soon. I think all the events have fired that fire before going, and I hope this all works right. It works as I intended. Decline. No, we don't need fuel. Okay, large caliber machine gun / cannons. So that is here. One and done. Combo techs, which are also very good. Specialized AA. And so also over here, well, good, but we're not going to do those yet. And we might as well also let's do seaports. It will help us on our resource gain a little bit. Okay, October 1. Oh, okay. Have we deployed or? Let's push that up. It's jumped up because we had been pushing it down. Okay, so we're producing lots and lots of supplies. And other things as well. Okay, so we're going to, oh, there's several decisions. Okay. U-boat flotilla. Okay. Man, I love my fellow modders. The helped with several versions of Thegan's oh boy, Vowert's Panzers. Man, blanking on that there for a minute. Vowert's Panzers, and I really like the mod. To a degree, some of the stuff is done in Hearts of Iron, and he used the very nice, decision mechanics of the game to trip some of the stuff. But in the earlier versions, they just have the nice little text thing, and to me, that just loses something. So, like these modders have done, just have the simple decision to fire when we want to fire it, and then have an event pop up. Now, it would be fine with me if if you could merge in the photo and that into it, and just to have one thing instead of have one fire the other. That would be fine. But this just to me gives so much more immersion. Okay, let's see. Underseaboat Flotilla, Hundus. Formed it under that. Okay. Okay, yes, we will take that. Lose some supplies, metal. We don't like the metal, but yeah, okay. And forming the, what's that, the 16th Army Corps. Activated in Berlin with Opner as CO. The 1st, the 3rd, and 2 infantry divisions on February was renamed. Okay. So briefly we will have, let's see, with our month, some negative effects, but of course the metal, which I don't like right now, but okay. So they even put Popner in charge of it. Well, that's a decent motorized headquarters fighting element. Not much so. Okay. Yeah. And yes, I'm going to save again here. Just because this is something I do struggle with as a mod designer, game designer, whatever you want to call it, of what do you do about this? Okay, this looks like it's going to work great, the way I intended it to. I did this before, at least before Hearts of Iron 4 ever came out. I don't know if it was announced yet or not, but so we didn't know anything about decisions. One thing I've really more and more to a large degree, I know a lot of people, oh, the new national focus trees, and they're really all excited by it. And I think I've come to sort of like some of the national focus tree type things, but I've sort of, and I still do, reject the idea of press button, wait 70 days, get your result, and the result is a known result. I just sort of reject that. How do I put this? Something like Anschluss with Austria. The Germans were preparing to invade. Like I've said before, and I've not really read much in any detail, just because I think because it didn't happen, no one's really researched it. Whether if the Austrian government didn't decide to cave to German pressure, if they had ordered their armed forces to fight, what would have happened? Again, I don't know if anybody's done the research at the time, or because that's sort of to some of the, you'd have to have some sort of period, but it would have been really hard, I guess, for people to the time to say, oh, some Austrian officer would have said, oh, I would have fought if the president ordered me to fight just because I was loyal to my oath. Well, the Nazis would sort of go, oh, you're not more loyal to your oath than to the German people or something, so that wouldn't necessarily say. And then post-war, because everybody was, reacting to the war, and the Austrians were as well. People might have said so. I don't know, but I don't think there would have been significant die-hard resistance to a German military invasion of Austria at the time of Oslo. So to a large extent, I sort of agree with the idea of it basically happening smoothly. Now, I set some prerequisites up that you have to be supporting von Papen as ambassador to Austria and other things like that to set the stage for the Anschluss, but it's automatically happens. Now here, this was, how do I put this? This was a well, it could be, negotiations are, if we were to go into negotiations with, say, U.S. with Russia right now over the Ukraine. If Putin was demanding or claiming that he was going to invade and take all of the Ukraine because it's all part of Mother Russia, and it should be part of Mother Russia, and the U.S. says no, and that we will fight, and that we are deploying U.S. troops into some parts of the Ukraine. That's about sort of what was going on. Obviously, with Russia, you do have the added nuclear war, because right now, if we were to take all nuclear weapons out of the situation, basically intercontinental ballistic missiles would be damaging. They were continental ballistic missiles, Scud missiles that Iran and Iraq shot at each other during their mutual war. Iraq did a lot of mostly rebuilding and taking apart and rebuilding Scud missiles and making them longer, bigger, whatever you want to call it, as opposed to purely building their own. But it was mostly a rebuilding, because they had a much longer way to go to get to Tehran. They wanted to bomb Tehran, the capital, where the Iranians could base their Scud missiles that they were buying from Russia or China or wherever, and both sides were using Scud missiles bought from either, I don't right offhand know whether they were mostly coming from the Soviet Union or mostly coming from China, or both, or just who was selling them to both sides. But Iran was shooting Scud missiles into Baghdad. It was expensive in loss of aircraft for either nation to bomb each other's capital at the time. So the Scud missiles, they were shooting them back and forth. And those missiles coming down, I don't know, could take out a city block, maybe. Depends on the buildings and whatnot. And, you load the missile warhead with flammable stuff, and if you have very flammable buildings, you could easily take out a city block. So, those Scud missiles are fairly big, though I'm sure your warheads on an ICBM could be larger, but I'm talking non-nuclear. For some reason, somehow we could banish all nuclear weapons. So short of banishing nuclear weapons, short of, if we got rid of nuclear weapons, and even if modern Russia were to try to redo an alliance because they basically have abandoned. China's actually a closer ally, I think, now with Cuba than Russia, but redo an alliance to try to put air bases or something to attack the U.S. The U.S. will just roll over any sort of launch sites, air bases to attack it in its hemisphere. And so if you were to have, shall we say, current modern aircraft, but again, no nuclear weapons, the U.S. is going to shoot down a lot of the Soviet aircraft before they can come in and do real damage. So the U.S. is like, okay, we're going to go to war. We may have lots of American soldiers die. We're going to have very few American citizens die, and there may be, because just we've seen what World War II can do, millions of people die in a war zone, just starvation and other kinds of things going on in a war zone. But the U.S. isn't going to be attacked much, even to this day. If you got rid of, nuclear weapons out of it. And so I could really see the U.S. going to war with Russia with no nukes going off, because if we were to put some divisions inside of the Ukraine and the Soviets realize, oh shit, if we launch any nuclear missiles, the U.S. is going to launch back, so we better not. And even if we lose the war, the U.S. isn't going to be taking over and destroying all of Russia. You know, where the boundaries of Russia may change or something, that may not be good. And so this is why I feel that the U.S. is also in a potential conflict, though President Trump is being very nice to China right now, though I think we're getting close to. And this is, as somebody pointed out, there has never been in the history of the world, in this history of since post-war world with it, that the U.S. has deployed 3 carriers into one region at a time that we have not gone to war in that thing. It's 3 carriers always means we've gone to war in the past. Now that doesn't mean we're going to go to war now, but we have 3 carriers sitting off of North Korea right now, whether they're in the Yalu Sea or the Japanese Sea or whatever. But we have 3 U.S. carriers in this part of the world right now, my understanding, or the third may be still steaming there. But either way, we're having 3 carriers in this area, and we've never in the past had 3 carriers in a region and either not been at or gone to war. So, you know, we had like 3 carriers or whatever when we were doing Vietnam, or when we were operating against Iraq the first or the second time, or we were, you know, going into Lebanon, or when we were operating, attacking Yugoslavia. You know, every time we get 3 carriers in the area, it means we're going. In the past, we've gone to the war. So, you know, we may be going to war over Korea, which could be bad. But right now, my feelings from a U.S. citizen go to war with Korea because they got nuke weapons, but they don't have the ability to get them anywhere near the U.S. Sort of saying, maybe we should. Now, I do know that, again, millions could die in Seoul because that's the border, what is right about here, you know. They can kill lots and lots of people in Seoul. But I'd rather do that now if they're going to still kill lots and lots of people in Seoul and kill lots and lots of people in Japan and kill lots and lots of people in the U.S. with nuclear weapons in 20 years. You know, if it's going to be the same localized result. Oh, and it may be, well, because they may still fire nukes at, you know, try to nuke South Korea. But the idea is I would rather have just, you know, fewer people do it now and then more people later. You know, sort of a harsh calculus on the Koreans. But so, you know, but so if we were to go to war, I don't know, with China over Taiwan or something right now, I don't think China, or over these islands that China's manufacturing down here, I don't think China's going to start shooting nuclear weapons at the U.S. because they would realize that although U.S. carriers may be attacking these islands, maybe sinking Chinese ships, maybe even striking targets on the mainland, the U.S. isn't going to completely take over China. They know that. Emotionally and intellectually, they know that. And they know that if the U.S. really got pissed, nuking great big chunks of China would be a whole lot worse than anything that's going to happen to China, as, you know, even if it loses a conventional war with the U.S. They know that. But this is a big deal, you know. And you look at World War I, is all these people's frame references World War I. I forget what Ribbentrop did, but obviously Hitler was a soldier in World War I. Chamberlain, I think he was a political type person, but they are all these men that are standing around here. I'm sure they're all of the age. That's an NSKK guy. I'm not exactly sure who he is or why is that. There's a German army officer that I'm almost sure by his age looks like he's World War I, and whoever that translator person is, probably all. These are all people that were alive in World War I, basically, in that photo. So their frame of reference is World War I. Well, Germany existed after World War I, though the Kaiser was removed from power. That would be like, say, the Communist Party removed from power of China. You know, Communist Party wouldn't like that, the structure, but I think a lot of the functionaries would probably just join whatever the new party was. So they would probably go, yeah, my city nuked, or I have the new government in power, and I'll be able to find a place in the new government. Would probably, be in their calculations a better thing. But for these people, Germany still basically exists. Yeah, they were betrayed, and the whole reason Hitler came to power. Austria, well, Austro-Hungarian Empire didn't exist, but Austria and Hungary still existed. And how do I put this? Well, it changes a bit in the Balkans, and it changes a bit in the East. But, and it was pretty harsh, the occupation of Belgium, and I don't, if somebody wants to put up articles on how harsh it was for the Belgians in World War I, and it was harsh, yeah. But for the great bulk of the people of France, of Britain, even of Germany, now Germany was a lot of harsh sort of lack of food, but most of the German cities weren't being bombed. So the great amounts of death, absolutely, in World War I, very tragic, but it's still sort of contained. Now, of course, the big new thing for these people, as they're seeing this, is air power. And if you look at some of the movies, including some of the H.G. Wells stuff that was turned into movies, at least the public scare for air bombing was not like a nuclear missile hits and everybody vaporized scare, but a great bulk, meaning more than half of a city's population killed in one sort of mass air raid. That's always sort of portrayed in the movies at this time. So I've watched a bunch of them that have dealt with different war scares and thoughts. And yes, towards the later part of World War II, with some of the mass, 1,000-plane bombings, we were starting to get to that scale. But it really sort of took that. Now, Japan, of course, with fire bombings, many of their cities were largely wooden, so they just easily went up in flames. And I'm sure killed lots and lots of people. Because firestorms do that. So this is a pretty big nail-biting thing. And I sort of want to try to, and I know I've talked a lot about this because I've gone on about a few other subjects, but I want to sort of try to get that across to the player. And I want the player, and I'm almost sitting here thinking, yeah, I'm going to abide by whatever they say, but I haven't even moved my armed forces into position at the moment. Here. And Hitler had, of course, at this time. Is sort of that feeling of, do we, is it really worth going to war over? And the, this is very far from a foregone conclusion. And I want to say, Chamberlain didn't want a war. Hitler wanted a war, but Hitler wanted a war only with Czechoslovakia. This whole maneuvers that he's doing now, Hitler is doing now, is try to keep Britain and France out of his war with Czechoslovakia. That's Hitler's mission here. Hitler fails in that mission in that he gets no war, he gets territory. He wanted a training war. I don't know what he envisioned post-war Czechoslovakia to be, meaning that they would have formed Slovakia and just taken, all of, Bohemia and Moravia, as well as the Sudetenland, as pure German conquest, or would he have thought of taking all of Czechoslovakia all the way down here to the tip, or would he have had a war, and if the, besiege Prague was to go, okay, we'll sign peace treaty, and then settle for just the Sudetenland, once you kick the Czechs' butts, but realizing, a fight like they had for Berlin or something would be super costly. So yeah, you just sign a peace treaty and let, Bohemia to continue to be part of, or be Czechoslovakia or something. I don't know what in their plan, in Hitler's plans for the result was. And I'll tell you what, Hitler didn't know how the war was going to go. The German armed forces at this time did not know how well motorization was going to work. There is obviously the fortified defensive lines on the Czech side here, and they were even building more here, which I don't think is simulated in this game at all. I've come to research they did build some more there in time for this crisis. And not that I don't think the Germans thought they couldn't get through it, because obviously it's a long line, and they presumably somewhere they presumed that they could get through the Czech defensive line. But what was going to be the casualties? How bad was it going to be? Was this going to be primarily a World War I with, you know, some tank support, like sort of at the end of World War I, or what? So obviously, if they had smashed through rapidly and the panzers and motorized forces are streaming towards Prague, Czechoslovakia collapses. But I don't know that they had really thought that that was like, oh, that's how it's going to be. I don't think they really thought that way. I think they were very unsure of just how well it was going to work. And at this time, particularly in 38, the infantry army is still paramount. Oh, sure, the infantry army would prefer to have trucks tow artillery pieces than horses. Absolutely. And sure, it would be nice to have trucks drive soldiers around instead of having them march. But Germany was still essentially the idea of an infantry army. Particularly the Panzer Corps, those were something new and different. Now, a lot of the infantry officers saw panzers as being sort of the cavalry of World War II. Screening forces, pursuit forces, you know, once the enemy collapses, you're pursuing them. All that kind of stuff. That's how I think they saw a lot of the armored forces. But they thought that all of that, once you got a stiff resistance, then it would have to come in and be the infantry still. Because what the Germans didn't have in World War I, and you can look at it, and they just didn't really have any. They started to make some of the T-Gewehrs, the anti-tank rifles, but they never had well spread out, you know, amongst all the divisions, anti-tank guns. They had artillery pieces, and artillery pieces would knock out tanks, but those were mostly set up to be artillery pieces, indirect fire, not light mobile things to react to and deal with tanks moving around. And they were never able to get enough anti-tank rifles in one place, especially when, you know, some of the offensives, that there were just bunches of them. You know, one or two anti-tank rifles doesn't stop 30 or 40 tanks coming at you. Because there's machine guns being fired by the tanks and by others and things. So the Germans realized, and they had lots of anti-tank guns, and the other nations had anti-tank guns. So the German army, the infantry army, shall we say, was far from sure that the tanks were going to be this all-powerful breakout force that's just going to sweep the stuff. And if you look at really how much the Germans were planning, and this is where I have a lot more knowledge and read several books on the plans for the Battle of France. For the Germans, they thought it was going to be a slightly more successful type of World War I situation. Grab a bunch of land, then sort of move forward in shifts using tanks and artillery. Do sort of what the Western Allies had always sort of thought they would do, but do it. And it was going to take time, and it was going to be costly, and it was going to be just terrible. That's what they were thinking it was going to be. So I'm just trying to set to you the scene of what these people were thinking on. Of course, you can read all of this here, all the text, which I think may be similar to this. Of course, you can read too. But this is their thoughts. So they were very unsure how. Hitler was sure that he was going to defeat Czechoslovakia, but what was that defeat going to look like, and what was the end state? I don't know. So he's trying to get, and and there was enough of a calculation to know that if Britain wasn't going to go to war, France wasn't going to do it on their own. They just weren't going to. So Germany gets threat against there, and we fire here. So the first meeting at Berchtesgaden, then I think Chamberlain goes back to Britain and then comes back for the second meeting in Godesberg here, and they produce the Godesberg Memorandum, versus and advises, and at this point advises Czechoslovakia at this point to mobilize for war. So here Chamberlain is thinking that yes, Britain may go, or be prepared for war. Britain, he's looking at doing this. Notice your descent skyrockets up here. I don't know why it went from red to green, but because there is massive concern in the German public and the German army about a possible war with France and Britain. Again, it's not maybe like what we would be afraid of, a nuclear war, but it's still a very, very major thing. And at this point, Mussolini sort of comes in on the stage. He wants to, play peacemaker. He's been growing in an alliance with Germany, but obviously, where the German border is versus the Czech border, Mussolini doesn't care, and he truly doesn't care. So he doesn't care if he gives all of Czechoslovakia to Germany. He just doesn't care. But he wants to look like to be the peacemaker, and partially by him showing up here, I do believe is sort of saying that we might be on your side, Germany, if you go to war with France and Britain. I don't know that it was ever that explicitly said, because obviously they had very private chats, and I don't know what's been reported. But now you're looking at the possibility now. Obviously, in game terms, they're already part of the Axis, but wasn't necessarily clear. But it's looking like for France as well as Britain that the war is going to widen. You're going to have a southern front for France. You're going to have a Mediterranean front for both France and Britain with naval operations. So this isn't just going to be a little private war between, France, Britain, and Germany and Czechoslovakia. It's getting bigger, which, is a problem. So, what is it going to be, war or peace? So this is how I've done this. You have an 80% chance for peace for our time, and 20% chance you'll get the crisis event. So, obviously, historically, this is the historic sort of photograph. Chamberlain, Daladier of France, Hitler, Mussolini, Count Ciano, Italian foreign minister, basically. I think he was officially at this time or not, I don't know, but he was different times. Medal they produce commemorating this, and this is these four people's signature on the document there. Sort of giving you artifacts of the event and sort of what's going on. Basically, by the time Mussolini is showing up and going on and discussing the future maps of Europe, and also remember that the Soviet Union had sort of guaranteed, I don't know that they're any sort of guarantee right now, non-aggression pacts, allied with Mongolia. Okay, yes, they're not now, but at this time historically, unless they pulled it off, independence guaranteed by Romania and Yugoslavia. Okay, well, actually, their independence was also sort of guaranteed by the Soviet Union. Czechoslovakia did have a bit of an alliance with the Soviet Union, although the Soviet Union had no land contacts with Czechoslovakia, and Poland was, in many ways, more afraid of what of the Soviets than of the Germans. I think mainly because they thought Britain and France would keep the Germans in check. Get the pun? Check. Okay. But, and so they were more afraid of that. But so Czechoslovakia's independence to some degree is being guaranteed by the Soviet Union at this time. But Stalin is not invited. And Stalin is a very, very, very paranoid man. And so here you have the four great power players of Europe sitting in a room, and he's not there. And he just is, because this happens fairly quickly, but he is just really pissed by this, that he did not get his input into this. Get his pound of flesh out of it is also part of it. But so we will see the results of this conference. Okay, it is peace in our time. So we're going to get it peacefully. what could have happened is the crisis would deepen, and then basically saying that France and Britain will go to war with Czechoslovakia, and then the German player has the choice of going, push it, the British and French are just bluffing, let's call their bluff, or back down. If they call the bluff, then there's a, I think it's a 50-50 chance of Britain backing down and no war. So 80-20, and then if you have the last 20, there's a 50-50. So it's about a 10% chance of actually a war happening, is how I've coded this. And so if any of you, and I'm really asking for any of you want to give input, just that sounds good, or too risky, too little, because this is sort of how I've done it for Hearts of Iron 4. I'm gonna not really, I don't think, change it any, I'm thinking about changing some of the steel requirements for a bunch of events at some point here, and stuff, and some other minor changes, but I don't think I'm going to change this for Hearts of Iron 3. Now, of course, you can always do what I did is before you click the decision thing, and this is why I like the decision mechanic. If the decisions sort of look just like events, meaning sometimes you have events that just pop up, sometimes you have decisions, and you click the box and the decision looks like this event, I'd be perfectly happy with decisions because I want to have that image as part of it. But before you click that, if you don't want to have a war, always save it, because you can go back and try this again. So there's a 50-50 chance, I believe is what it is. It's been more than a year since I coded the thing up, probably almost more than 2 years, so I don't remember exactly, but I think it's a 50-50 for the second one, that Britain will back down and there's no war, or you'd get the war. Obviously we didn't, but notice now the tension, but this dissent would not have gone down if there was a war. It actually would have gone up. So we're lowering it already back down to 4.3, and the Treaty of Munich and the Sudetenland, that's Hitler entering. I didn't make this image, very nice thing, Hitler entering the Sudetenland. And that's basically sort of how it went. And as you can see here, I very much try to integrate my event, or my events, like we call it an event chain, into Black Ice's work. And that's what I wanted to do to make it as smooth and integrated as possible. I'm very, maybe you can tell, I'm very sort of proud of being able to do some of that. Okay, so now let's pause that. I want to look. Did we achieve? Well, we achieved, okay, 3 factories from there, and this is sort of reacts as if it's a well, occupied territory, or revolt. Oh, this is just because we recently got hold of it, so it's acting as if it's a destroyed or something. So we're going to get, wow, 39 energy, 6 metal out of that. That's great. That will help us. Looks like the rest of Sudetenland, but they didn't have much resources. Okay, Luftwaffe, or take Luftwaffe, or Lufthansa, sorry, planes for the Luftwaffe. We might need these planes for our airborne forces. Shall we requisition them? They don't need them anymore. We'll gain 2 in descent and lose supplies and get some stuff from the Luftwaffe. Let them supply. We'll lose descent, which is good. Or we can scrap them, which gets even more descent. And, well, a lot of metal and a lot of rare materials. That's a big bonus, but we're going to let them fly because, I don't know, either I'm stupid or I just don't, because we can power down that descent, but yeah, I don't know exactly how many of the 2-engine transports that is, but I'm going to let them fly. We would give them money for rare materials. No, we are trying to increase our money supply. Okay, armored unit command and control. Yeah, we're gonna let that go. Still not yet 38 or 39, I mean, and we've got a lot of still 38 technologies like that. No. Okay, so transport ship engines have advanced. Nice. Stop that. And gun position between engine airplanes have advanced. I think that means mostly for bomber types, not the ME1 or BF-110s or whatever. So and yeah, I know we'll let that go because it's still just a 38 tech, and we have a lot of those aircraft. And air bases for Austria, round 4. We'll take that. Oh, okay. UTR Fallschirmjäger divisions. Okay. Fallschirmjägers played an important role during World War II. German Fallschirmjäger in World War II were the first paratroopers to be committed in large-scale airborne operations. They came to be known as the Green Devils by the Allied forces. They fought against, as well as their unique, distinct, as well as for their uniquely distinct morale. Okay, the Luftwaffe built up a division-sized unit of 3 Fallschirmjäger regiments plus the supporting arms and assets known as the 7th Flieger Division, which I think we already have. Well, we had an event regarding that, I know that. Should we form these Green Devils as they become very useful? Am I thinking of something else? These will start the event chain of the Fallschirmjäger divisions. You can have historic Fallschirmjäger HQ earlier, or you can have them historic date at full strength. Why did I think we already had some Fallschirmjägers? I don't know. Okay, so we can do the nice image there. I like that. Very good work. We can do the historical divisions. We get the HQs now. No need. Well, as I've sort of said, my timetable for starting the war is 1940. So I don't need anything now. And yes, if we were facing a war with Britain or something else, we might want them early, but we'll wait. Move these to the top. Okay, and here, well, I want the Scharnhorst to get a little more love and a bit more built. But we'll put the submarines just after that, so once a few more of these things. Okay, we still haven't gotten the birds. Escorts, I guess. Oh no, we have. We've got 12 escorts. Started out with 2. We're building some more. Okay, and we have some more research points. Okay, well, we'll do road network. In Peru, we give them money now. I want to get. Well, finally, we're up at 300 or 3,300. But just wait for another event to want 300 money or something. Okay. Fighter pilot training advance. Very useful. It's now 30. So we're going to stop that. Airborne assault tactics. Yeah, let's move to that. And this is something that I definitely found interesting. I live in California, as most of you know who followed this for a while. And I remember back as the kid, was where they started the no smoking craze in California. Now I think smoking is very bad for you. I don't smoke. I've never smoked, though I've worked in offices with people who smoke. But back when I was a kid, they started out with non-smoking sections in restaurants. And yeah, I sort of thought that was okay. And because, yeah, you don't necessarily want to be near smokers. Now they've banned smoking in public outside in California, basically. So there's other than, at least that's my understanding of the rules. I don't smoke, but they not just banned it in like inside of a public building. I mean, out on the street, they ban smoking just about everywhere. So you can only really sort of like smoke in your car and smoke in your home now. And so this has gone from, I remember, and this is like LA County or something, or LA City or whatever. It's not everywhere in California. Okay, so sorry if you think it's everywhere in California. Some areas in California, they ban smoking in the public on the streets. I used to work as a bouncer for many years, just as a part-time thing, a couple days a week, or a couple of nights a week kind of thing. Several of the places, partially they were really popular for us because they had a patio, and at least at that time, on the patio, since it was outside, you could smoke on the patio. That was legal. Inside the bar, the inside restaurant, you couldn't smoke in. So a lot of the smokers would, it was places were busy enough to want to have lines for people to get in on the cool nights. You show up on a Wednesday night or something, there's no wait, no lines, nothing. But the cool nights, it was big, it was jumping. And part of the reason, though, is because smokers could hang out and smoke outside. Like I say, smoking is bad for you. I agree with warnings on cigarettes. I know people are talking now about, the coup d'etat attempt, almost, if we will say this, but definitely an assassination attempt on U.S. congressmen. There were, I think it was approximately 30 U.S. congressmen when that guy came and shot the minority whip, or the majority whip. I mean, he was the one congressman shot. There were, 4 other people shot? 3 other people? Other than him were shot. Well, maybe a couple of the other people were just injured diving over things like broken ankles or something. Serious injuries, not life-threatening, but then the two Capitol Police security guys, or police officer, but they were security detail. They were shot. One of the other staff members was shot. I'm sure of that. And so, if there wasn't those 2 guys part of that security detail, there would have been about 30 congressmen and senators left in the U.S. House of Representatives. And there is no mechanism other than special elections. I don't know about senators. State governors can appoint a senator if they go to another job. I know the state governor can appoint a senator, but I know for the House of Representatives, they have to be elected. You can't appoint a replacement. You have to elect a replacement. So had he got those 30 people, you know who would have had a majority in the House of Representatives? The Democrats. I mean, everybody, this guy was a crazy nut. No, that guy was not a crazy nut, and I don't want to say his name. I think I remember it, but I'm not going to say his name because I don't want to give him that satisfaction of being remembered. He's just the DC shooter or whatever. Had he gotten approximately these 30 people, he would have changed who was the legislature head in the government. There was no quick, other than scheduling, and it's up to each state and how quickly they do it. And so if it, and some of the Republicans were from majority Democratic states, and they could drag their feet on replacing these, setting up special elections to do that. And this guy, he had a history of violence, most assuredly. And if the district attorneys didn't plead down one incident to a misdemeanor so that the guy wouldn't have done it, if he would have been charged with the crime, or if they would have actually, the crime that he was originally charged with would have kept him from buying guns legally. But since they pleaded it down to a misdemeanor, so that the guy would, like, okay, yeah, I'll agree to yeah, I broke that misdemeanor law. Okay, let it go of a violent situation. It allowed him to buy guns. So just all of you people out there who are against and are worried about too many people getting guns without proper background checks. He had background checks, but because district attorneys did not charge him with a crime that would keep him from buying guns, because his lawyers would force him to go to trial. There was enough evidence, but just to clear the case, he'll plead to a lower misdemeanor violent situation that's dealing with some family issues I don't know the details of. But the original charge, what he was originally charged with, had they prosecuted and won the case, he would have not been legally able to buy firearms. He might have still got firearms, but he was not a crazy man. Because the reason I say he was not a crazy man is because I've yet to hear one bit of evidence that he has ever been adjudicated, or any sort of mental doctor has ever stated that there is any mental problems with him. There is no history of psychotic episodes. There is zero history in that person's background of any mental disorders, other than being a Bernie Sanders supporter, if you call that a mental disorder. That's the only mental disorder that I know of that he has ever been anybody claimed to have. And again, I know the other guy's name, the guy who shot Gabby Giffords. They were originally, and even recently, since this thing came out, tried to talk about Sarah Palin putting we got to target these congressmen. Well, it was just on a map with a target symbol. I was just targeting them against, and it was just targeting them to do fundraising to an election cycle that was going on. These are the seats that they thought were vulnerable to switch from Democrat to Republican. That's all she was talking about. But this spurred the other guy on. No, the other guy that shot Gabby Giffords, he was a leftist. He had a many years, 2 or 3 years, case of sending letters to her as his congressman, and his ongoing threats and other things. He was had a mental background of being a crazy man. He was a crazy man of the left, and so he was who shot her. Now she survived, but it was a head wound, very bad. But that was a crazy man who was a leftist nut job, think devil worshiper or something. And but he had various, I think like school psychiatrist or whatever, that had seen him, and he was that had seen him in a professional sense and judged him to be a crazy person. He was a crazy person. The person who shot Congressman Scalise here in the U.S. has none of that background. So he was not a person that was mentally insane or crazy. I do not believe that had he survived and taken, into custody and then stood trial, that he could have gone for a defense as being, mentally incapable of understanding right from wrong or whatever, to get off on a mental deficiency thing. So we're seeing that. Now get back to here, that would switch things around. With this smoking situation here with Germany, it goes to what we're seeing here. This is sort of the start of this, of control by the government. Like I say, I'm against smoking. I think smoking is bad for you. I know people who do smoke think the nicotine high is, or whatever the high, nicotine or something to get you up, that's really good. Okay, it's your right to do it. I'm all for your right to do it. But here is the start of a no smoking thing. And so Germany, the National Socialists banned smoking in many public places. We saw earlier when the Nazis were coming to power, they were using cigarettes as a significant funding apparatus for themselves. Now they've switched around, and I thought that all this is interesting. And so I watched the situation go here in the U.S. from no smoking sections. Government mandated to, if you're going to have a public business, you have to have a no smoking section. Sounds reasonable. Then no smoking in indoor restaurants or bars. Can't do that. Outside you can. Then in some municipalities, it's not statewide, I don't believe, but it's in some municipalities, you can't smoke out on the street. So you can smoke in your own car. Oh, but I don't think you can smoke in your own car if you have a child in the car, because the secondhand smoke. It's just craziness of government control. Well, I guess at that point, I'll end this episode, my jihad against big government. Even when they're telling you good things to do, I don't like it. I don't like it. And so, that's just my viewpoints on it. So thanks for watching. Thanks for liking the videos. I really do appreciate that. And please post questions, comments, suggestions, ideas. Love hearing from you. See you next time for more Hearts of Iron.